times, 7 times more rainfall. Would you not call that the age of the water bearer? I mean, it's all there for us to see. Like these were left for us as clues to understand where we're moving in the future. The water bearer arrives, more rainfall. Oh wait, let's galactic. We'll get cosmic radiation management. We'll take credit for this, and then we're all right on the turnings. And and then please add this up that the entire world is being shattered and reformed right now. Why right now? So if you start to add these 4 or 5 layers on top of each other, you get a wider picture of why a lot of things are happening right now. So Ransom, I'll turn it back to you. If I know you can add on to that, and I hope you would.
I think that there's some really weird stuff going on. We have a restream glitched. I think it's streaming again. I don't know. It had last week's title on it. Um, but I wanted to show you this here.
Yeah, as you do that, I'm going to put the live feed up on Telegram for us if anybody's interested. We're going to be broadcasting through Telegram Live as of next week, and also Substack. We're adding those two, so please join us there. Civilization Cycle.
So what are we really getting ready for when you have countries cloning Ice Age animals, and then at the same time you have Australia? They're shooting 750 koalas from helicopters. So I just see this all across the board where people are they're trying to engineer nature, and it just doesn't seem possible. You know that they're going to mess things up. If you can just think about any other government program that they've ran and how efficient or non-efficient that runs, then that will tell you how efficiently trying to block out the sun or regulate which animals, are here on Earth. Let's put in some old ones. Let's take out some that are alive now. These people are trying to create some kind of nightmare scenario where the public, and I mean that as far as the public of the entire world, billions of lost souls looking for an answer, looking for help. And I think it's because they know there's going to be a food shortage that they can't cover up, hide, distract, or any of that other normal propaganda that they use to control stuff. So now we're going to go into whose fault is it, and who's going to fix it, and who's taking credit for whatever's going on right now. So I don't even believe that they can block out the sun. I don't think that they could put up as all the jets in the world and spray as much as they want. They are not going to block out the sun. So why are they telling you that they're trying to do that? It seems to me that it's the same thing as the climate change thing. They keep blaming all the fires here, there, everywhere. It's climate change. I saw I think it's a senator from New Jersey. I think it was from New Jersey anyway. Don't quote me. Either way, it was a member of our government who said they felt an earthquake and then followed that by the climate crisis is real. As if something that man's doing on the earth is going to trigger earthquakes because of the weather. So we're in bizarro land. And think about that.
Fracking would do that. Fracking would.
Yeah, well, those are little tiny earthquakes, and we know exactly where they come from. Like there's a few over here in Texas. Every couple days they have a 3 or 4.0. It's located directly at a fracking place. So we know what's doing that. But still, fracking is not connected to the weather, right? They're not out there because it's rainy or sunny or not sunny or whatever, fracking and causing an earthquake. It has absolutely nothing to do with weather, and neither do these fires. And like I was saying before, they just, again, like in California, arrested climate change and is going to charge climate change with arson. So that's where we're at. And I think what's going to freak everybody out is things that they know are coming that in modern reference never happened. Like we've never seen a big impact. We've never seen, our magnetic field collapse. since we've been alive in modern times. Now, I know Neanderthal and Cro-Mag and all them were dealing with it, and they seem to have come up with some ways to protect themselves. It could have been the red ochre that they were smearing all over themselves, which may explain why all of the later civilizations were also spreading that red ochre all over them as a sun protectant. They might have known that, at one time people were just dropping dead from being outside, or they got really burned and sick and, slowly died in front of them. What a horrible sight that would have been of people developing, I don't know what the name for skin cancer is, but I'm sure it's a lot easier to get with no magnetic field.
What if they just melted in front of them? And then dolmens, hiding in dolmens as well. That's another one.
Right. Oh, that's why.
Yeah, I sent you a couple links here. One is the flash traffic off. One of the biggest stories in the news right now. Again, if we're coming back, then we're talking about change of an age, change of an era. This one here with India and Pakistan going on. I know not a lot of you seeing this news, so I'll bring it to you here. India cuts off fresh water to Pakistan. So in the 1960s, there's a United Nations or World Bank brokered treaty to share the water because there's a lot of watershed coming off the Himalayas. This area in Jammu and Kashmir, I visited myself way back in the early 1990s. I went to this place called Leh, Leh. It was way up in a place called Ladakh, which is hella far north up there. And that area was kind of off kilter at that point. Anyway, there was a lot more fighting going on then. Like you had to get permits to go up there, and it was very limited where you could go once you went outside Leh. It was a very dry, spiritual place up there with some real cool valleys that were irrigated and thing. But once you're coming off the Himalayas there, their watershed comes down into both nations, into Pakistan and India. So obviously there were dams built all up and down there. And once you build a dam in a country, if you want to turn it off, you can turn off the water. So there was a broker deal in 1960. It took them forever to come to conclusion because the construction was ongoing. So a lot of these smaller watersheds that were already being dammed up. So then it came to, all right, well, if you dam up the big ones, okay, you guys get the ones going east and they get the ones going west, and a couple of them are going to overlap, and you got to let the water go. It's a world resource. Then as of today, India just cut all their water off. So Pakistan said that is actually a direct that is you've just declared war on us. So water now is a trigger point. It was a trigger point anyway for the farmers up in Washington State when, for some reason, they woke up on Tuesday and said, all right, everybody, all 30,000 water rights holders, you need to prove that you hold the water rights. And some people are like, well, we've had the ranch since like 1850. Before this place was a state, bro. We've had this place in 1900, all the water rights up here. They're like, no, you need to prove it. Let's see your contractual agreement going back to the early 1900s. Oh, did you get that ratified? Da, da, da. So even if and then there's a whole nother bevy of like another 300,000 or 400,000 people that you have to prove your water well is at a certain depth and you're not overusing and not overtaking. And you also have to show the permits for getting a well drilled. So they're really like putting the thumb screws down up in Idaho and also in Washington State. But this is a big one here. This is the Indus Valley, which is interesting. I wanted to point that out. We are back at the cradle of civilization again here in the Indus Valley, fighting over water because this area has dried out much like Africa and North Africa has from 6,000 years ago. It keeps getting drier, drier, drier. Now the rainfalls are coming back, and they're putting hydroelectric dams in quite a few places where they never had rainfall before. They're getting floods in the deserts. Like archaeological ruins are being unearthed from the floodwaters. It's kind of insane what's going on, and that's in Afghanistan. So the Indus Valley, and I have that map up there. I sent you the link there, Ransom, because it's a pretty interesting map they have. It looks like an older map, too, from like the 1960s. Yeah, that one. So you can see the Suleiman Range, and then you follow the red arrows. So the red arrows is the direction of flow from the Himalaya down in the Indus River down to the coast down there. And by the way, Dwarka is where the river exit out into the delta. If you continue further out into the delta from the exit of the Indus River, Dwarka, that fabled city that they found underwater, is there as well. But you have to, understand that sea levels would have been 40 to 60 foot lower And then, you look at sea level rises and say, wait, maybe our history doesn't really match what they told us about sea level rise. If you got, a 10 square mile city sitting off the coast in deeper water than was supposedly the time of construction, you can't build in water, which means that place was far drier at the times than they are telling us in terms of sea level being beneath. And, because sea levels could be lower, but you can't farm on salty land, right? So we're talking way back when it had rained for 1,000 plural of years to wash that salinity away, where it actually was arable land again, off coast, way off coast, like 50 miles out off the coast. Then somebody had the bright idea, well, if Dwarka's out there, why don't we just follow the drainage patterns off of the Indus River? And lo and behold, they found other settlements. Some not as deep going up, and as they went back toward the land, it was just city, town, road, city, town, walls, all underwater going right back to the land, and then travel right up there, and you're going to find the same cities, towns, village structure all the way following that as well. But the periphery going off where the Indus River sits today is very small and very dry. It's some 50 miles either direction of that. That's how much more the main settlements were off that river. Like think about any river today, and somewhere in Ohio, like Cincinnati, for example, would be 50 miles to the east or the west of that river. Dried out as a major population center. But this is a cradle of civilization, and they're fighting for the water again. So, all this ancient history keeps swinging back again. It is so strange how everywhere that's being fought for, looked at, fought over is this. They must know the cycle is going to switch back. And this place, which is bone dry, well, I wouldn't say bone dry, but very dry and not the most hospitable for crops, is going to become a verdant land of milk and honey once again. The water bearer returns. So this, if it was the cradle of civilization, the Harappa civilization, all right, go back. If it was good enough for Harappa and it was very wet and they had trade routes through there and it made a civilization rise, one of the greatest on the planet ever known. You think when the water comes back again, there could be a possibility that 2.0, just asking for a friend. That friend is you, Ransom.
Yeah, what's funny about all this is, I don't know how to put it. Okay, so the proto-Indo-Europeans. Okay, so before there was the Indo, there was the people you're not allowed to name at the time that moved in there and brought horses and wheels and, the caste system and the whole bit. They were fighting over rivers because that wasn't the only place that group stepped off of the steppe. And so to speak, I wonder if they call it that because of that. Anyway, stepped off the steppe and moved into. We know that they went into the other cradle civilization because they wrote it in cuneiform, where they came from, where they brought their horses from, and all of that stuff. And then you fast forward to modern times and don't take this little dispute as something that's not a big deal. Both India and Pakistan are nuclear nations, and they also both border China. So any little thing that and they already get out there and they slam the gates at their border. They have a long held kind of animosity towards each other, or a competition, if you will. They both have nuclear weapons. They're the older style, but they can easily take out each other's populations and have China, the United States, Russia, all of these other entities having a say-so on what goes on and the retaliation afterwards. And if you think about how easy it would be to blink out 1 billion people, that's the area you would do it in, is Pakistan and India, and they'd be gone. And think about that.
I sent you the map. I sent you another map, and lo and behold, there's Mohenjo-Daro right there. Wow.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. And it's funny.
I just sent you a map of the Indus Valley civilization, 2600 BC. You might want to check that. 4,500 years ago, Egyptians are running, building their pyramids. We got another place over here. Hey,
right.
Don't look at that one.
And then it's funny that you sent me these news articles about, the factory shutting down. I had all of that queued up already. This is exactly where my mind was going tonight before you sent me those, is this thing in India and Pakistan. Because Yeah, they are
But that
two
Indus,
nuclear
the Indus
nations.
Valley map, if you could bring that one up, I think that's incredibly powerful to see. I mean, you're looking at this region over here, and we're still fighting for it. It's been purposely set alight. The British did a great disservice by, going in the Punjab and dividing that amongst cultural lines, like, and it's a rice growing region that's under drought that's going to reduce global supply, not only on the Pakistani side, but on the Indian side there. The rice crop is just tremendously reduced in both sides, but the political lines that were drawn on purpose to cause such conflict were drawn by the British. But I digress. There you go, man. To walk us through the Indus Valley civilization here.
Yeah, this is where it all began. So you already had cities over here. They had stuff like running water and stuff, so they were quite, advanced even before the people, the Europeans in the Indo-European came off the step there. And then you have all of these old cities. Some of them were mythological until they found them right off the coast. And like you said, they found other cities by just backtracking the river where the river used to be, where it was dried up. And sure enough, here's all these old, ancient, advanced civilizations living right there. And then the weirder part is if you go to the south right here, it doesn't show it on this map. But if you go a little south, you find the Ataman Islands and the people that live
Andaman
there.
Islands.
Yeah. And they have people there that have been living in the Stone Age for the last 10,000 years, segregated, despite all this other world history happening around them.
Yeah, that's the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, and you can find those squeezed over in between India and Myanmar.
And another thing weird about that is that those people on that island test for another hominid. So, not the one that you find in the other populations like sub-Saharan Africa, and in oceanic populations they have a ghost species there. So there's now about 12 to 15 ghost species, and that they only say that because there's no skeletal remains of that species by itself, but their genetic markers are in us. So those guys on that island are literally, what you're looking at is a Cro-Magnon mix with the hominid that's unknown, and they've just been sitting there doing their thing while, history unfolds everywhere else around the world. So it's really ironic that the center, so to speak, if this gets worse with India and Pakistan, the center of all civilizations will be focused on that area once again.
Yeah, and you have to wonder the disruption too, because, all right, walk me down this supply chain here. India is a major exporter as well. So if you were going to look at a secondary export nation, India would be it. I mean, yeah, Vietnam's got some factories and it's nice and everything, but, India dwarfs it in terms of manufacturing, textiles. They are a major producer as well. Like, you got to think about these two major export destinations coming off the planet. You're telling me they're both getting ruined at the same time. Again, for me, it seems like purposeful disruption, but maybe I'm naive. The way they're going to be blocking the sun for, these sort of things to claim for the cooling. The world's being disrupted. And now not only is there one complete mad disruption with the tariffs that explain away a lot of goods not coming. And I will give you some time. I'll give you a time frame on that. Well, let me mark that 14, and then we got 21, and we got 30, and I'll explain the numbers to you here. And then we got 45. Okay. But now we got India. And if something were to happen in India, the second largest exporter of goods that we could rely on as a backup for a lot of electronics products, they're gone. So, China's not the only game in town in terms of exports, and they try to scare you in thinking of such like, oh, China's shutting down. We're not going to get anything. Come on, now people want to make money, so they're just going to go to a second or third or fourth or fifth choice down the line of exporting, especially if it's electronics goods, right? High margin on those. If you're going to be pulling in some iPads, some iPhones, that sort of thing, these factories are also in other nations, and maybe you'll not be so brand loyal at this time. Maybe you'll switch brands. I mean, cars are made in India too. I would love to get a Tata and bring it over and drive. They're kind of fun. Clownmobile or whatever, drive in there. But you got to think about it. the second largest exporter and manufacturer on the planet is going to go down at the same time because of this. It's it. Now, for me, that's the mark that they're purposefully like starting to cut things off. If Vietnam went down, I would say, okay, they're right next to China. I get it. There's a lot of investment, and a lot of factory owners are from actually China that are the ones that set up in Vietnam. So I could see an interplay there. That makes sense. But what doesn't make sense is taking down another large exporter at the same time. That is a full cutoff of our goods across the planet. And I got some numbers for you. 14 days is so far the amount of time that nothing has come out of China. It takes 30 days for them to get to the port of Los Angeles, which means that after 15 more days, mark it on your calendar. Let's see, 24, we got 5, the 10th of May. There will be no goods in the port of Los Angeles. The last ship will have sailed, and whatever gets arrived or whatever, that's all we get. 45 days will follow with Houston and other ports further afield. New York, for example, Houston. And a friend of mine just said that they were down in, where is it, Mobile? Was it Mobile, Alabama? Oh, port in Alabama, excuse me. I don't know what it was. I think it was said Mobile. No cargo ships at all. Zero. That's an old shrimper, by the way. So I trust him. Knows all the ports, all the waterways and everything. He was shocked that there were no ships in there. So do you think it's a coincidence? And I'll ask you that, Ransom. Do you think it's a coincidence that now India is being shut down as the secondary largest manufacturer on the planet? I don't know. It seems kind of weird for me that would happen. But that's just me.
No, I think it's planned. I think whoever's messing with these markets, they know exactly who to hit. And I would look at Brazil next. Watch. They'll have a big issue in Brazil. And then you have like, 1, 2, 3. And then you can just discount Ukraine, as you've been following that stuff. And then there's a 5th. So you could start counting, these different big areas that they're just shutting down and reestablishing different trade. And I was going to show you this article about, I was looking at African news, and they're all, super talking about how they're going to be switching over to China and making deals with China. If I got that up there.
Africa is. Yeah, there's a couple good African channels on Telegram to follow as well.
Here it is. If I put that up.
Tons of African news. Very few people follow African news. It's very important that you do.
Yeah,
Al Jazeera's good when you can get the African news off Al Jazeera if you want to go for a low-hanging fruit.
Right. They're saying they're going to upgrade to an unprecedented level here. Upgraded to a new level, says leaders during Ruto state visit. And this is just Kenya. So keep in mind, they're investing in all of these rising nations down there. So that's what's going on. There's going to be a brand new competition of markets. And the fact that, we just talked about the other day that we don't really need the trinkets, all the disposable income items that we buy from Temu and Amazon that are primarily produced in India and China, almost all of that. And if we're going to stop buying it, then they're going to stop making it, and they're going to put those resources into other things. So you imagine you're just in China working at a factory, and they're like, nope, you need to go over here to this field now. We're doing this new stuff with the African nations. So that's where you're going. You imagine living over there where they just decide that your whole direction is changing and you get notified by the government. Over here, we have to play propaganda games for weeks and, sell it to the audience. And then when they do it anyway, you'll be like, oh, well, that's how it is.
Yeah, so while you were talking, I just put a simple query into Grok here. Tell me the ports financed by China across Africa, the largest. And Nigeria, West Africa, Lagos. Now, that's an oil exporter, but in my opinion, China is going to want to go over to the east of Africa because then it can get on the maritime string of pearls and continue from Gwadar, which is over in Pakistan, and then head back over to Jakpu port in Myanmar and unload right there and get that into Yunnan province. Kunming is the largest capital city there, largest city. But that's, mark my word, they are trying to get west to east cargo, especially foodstuffs, energy. And I know the Tanzania was a hot one. Port of Sudan was another one. That's why it's highly contested over there. Cameroon's got a port, Kiribati, but that's more of an inland river port there. Mozambique also has a port. They're not too far down. Here it is, Tanzania, Bagamoyo. That is the big one. And again, Yalami in Kenya. These are all the ones. Mauritania, well, that's an island nation down there. But if you can look at what China is financing, they are trying to use Africa as a production area and militarily escort it through the String of Pearls. They're not out there patrolling the entire ocean. They are just going to control that little sliver along India, right past Pakistan. As long as they can get it over to Jakpu and they don't have to go through the Malacca Straits, they're all good. Because the oil offloading terminals at Sittwe port there in North Myanmar, and then they have, I think, 16 rail lines heading from that same port over with multiple, not only LNG lines, but they got oil pipelines as well. And that's the biggest deep water port. And that's been dredged out by the Chinese, and they're over there getting all the free stuff, giving it to Myanmar. And it's just a sliver of a way across that northern part up there. And I encourage you to look at the map. Look at the northern map in Jakpu Port. It starts with the KY. There's a J sound. I used to run around down there, JY, Jakpu. And that is going to be China's largest offloading station, because they do not have to go through the Malacca Straits. But by the time, you got to get this, if they went all the way around Singapore and came way back up, and let's say they even loaded down Pearl River Delta off somewhere near Hong Kong, the amount of extra fuel, and then they got to get it inland somewhere after that, like the amount of extra days on the sea, and then the unloading and the amount of cargo transport and cost just to make it go, let's say from Pearl River to, like, say, somewhere in Guangdong, and make it go inland. Or you could just, and I'm talking more about the center of the country, it would be much, much more cost effective to come from the Myanmar side, send it through Kunming, and then blast it out to all those other periphery areas. And that has been the plan for quite some time. At least since 2014, they've been working on the port down there in Sittwe. And that's the whole, when I say Sittwe, that's the whole inland estuary area around there. The Rohingya were there, and they were kind of in the way. And yeah, and then the port itself, and then they've really, they were just going to some massive, incredible building projects there. Of anything on the scale that you see, Three Gorges Dam kind in China, they were doing that, but for coastal offloading. If it gives you an idea, if you can paint that picture in your mind. That's how vast it is up there now. Deep water dredging and all that offloading straight to China. So you can understand why they want Africa, because they can control those sea lanes super close to the coast, and it's not that far. They're just hopping a skip of a bit of an ocean, and then America can't. I mean, they could try, but there's a lot of extra hostiles around there too that they're not going to want to deal with. So they get that route, we'll leave them alone.
Yeah, we literally have to have South America in our back pocket even to compete with that. I wanted to ask you about this here. Speaking of India, India's National Medical Commission mandates facial recognition and GPS tracking for all its medical faculty. So you can just imagine, what would they need to keep track of all of their medical personnel in a country the size of India? Like what event? I don't know. Maybe a nuclear exchange between their neighbor over water rights? I mean, is that too far-fetched? Do you think Pakistan would be willing to threaten with nukes over their water? Because they get almost all of their water from that.
Or to control the pharmaceutical smuggling, because, by the way, India is another, absolutely major pharmaceutical producer. But again, they get a lot of the precursors from China, so where there'd be some sort of thing like China would say, we're not going to give any more precursors if you send them off to America. But if you look at the size and the breadth of the pharmaceutical industry in India, it is, gigantic. So as we come down to number 2 on the planet that could pick up some of these pieces or fill in some gaps where we're going to lose it from China, and both of those are going offline, that creates a large problem. It does. And you got to think these people that are in the midst of pharmaceuticals, perhaps they want to know where they are because they're going to be, trying to offload, transship, slap new labels on, and get it to America at a some sort of premium. I don't know, but I would just think that on the worst case scenario, one of them would launch a nuke at another, and it would go off course, and it would land in the watershed that would damage that water for, I wouldn't say eternity, but for both nations for thousands of years. That would be a worst case scenario where they actually wanted to go nuclear, and it took out the entire water source for, that region. You're talking billions of people. At that point itself, life on this planet changes for everybody. If that were to happen, if it were to get into the watershed somehow, you're going to have billions of people migrating. Billions, not millions, not tens of millions, billions, plural. Because you don't know where the wind drift's going to go on that. And where would they walk to? How would they get out of there? They would obviously follow the old Silk Route or some of the desert routes, You think they're going to be allowed to pass through Afghanistan, and you think they're going to be allowed to pass through Iran to get further afield or get away from some of the danger and maybe make it to Europe or up somewhere in the Middle East by foot or however they can get up there? Because I assure you that all the fuel will have run out. There's no way they're driving anywhere. At that point, if a billion people try to migrate, they ain't driving. So how do you get there? A horse is going to be a valuable thing. A camel would as well. The dromedary would be a new, like the supercar. I would trade you a double humped camel for your Ferrari. I'll give you 2 Ferraris. I still want the one camel, okay? Because that's what will get you out of there. Has for thousands of years. Ferraris get stuck in the sand, or Lambos, whatever. McLarens stuck.
I am so beside myself because I have left my wallet and my other camel, sir.
Yeah, right.
Now, where they're not going to go is through Turkey and around the Black Sea. So if a bunch of people are running from India, they may be running back into the fire. Because like I was saying, we have this nuclear possibility on both sides of India. Right? You get into Turkey and all of that stuff over there. They're having their own dilemma, which just also happens to be a major source of products for the world now in dispute. How that's going to turn out, we don't really know. It doesn't seem like the peace talks are going anywhere. And Putin is saying, you know what? I'll use nukes. Whatever. I'm not scared. So then this is how things get started. You say you had it start in India and Pakistan, say Pakistan nukes India, the U.S. gets involved, so China gets involved on the other side, and then we have stuff going on in Taiwan and Japan area, and then Russia decides to join in Ukraine, and we already know that the Chinese are dumping billions into Ukraine right now. So this is something that they have their finger in too. So you could just see how it could spiral right out of control in no time. And that may be the plan. And might be why they're, seeing what they could dabble with these ice age animals, because they may induce their own nuclear winter before the earth or sun ever throws anything at us.
Yeah. And in India, I've traveling there. I've been there 3 times, and incredibly warm and welcoming people, Further down in Delhi and whatever, in big cities, it's always like a big city anywhere. Anywhere on the planet's a big city. You got scammers, you got hustlers, you got normal people, business people, just it's a city, right? But once you get out of the cities and you really get up to, outside those population centers, damn, man, people are really, really incredibly welcoming. Bend over backwards to help you. I remember one time I was, you used to be able to get a half price ticket to get on top of the bus. And I'd ridden around, and this is the Himalayas, and ridden around on a bunch of bus stops, and it was always super mellow. And And it was always very safe out there. So one time I saw on the map, I thought, you know what? I'm going to get out here and I'm just going to walk because it's kind of downhill, one little up, and I'm just going to make my way down to the town. And I'm just going to walk from here, roll up a couple spliffs, But it ended up getting super dark, super fast. And I was still super many miles away. I misjudged on the map how far it really was. And some people took me and they saw me walking like, what are you doing out here walking by yourself, man? You're staying over here tonight. Didn't know me from Adam. Just some dude walking with a backpack out in the road, not on an off trail anywhere. I was just following the roads, trying to get down there. Like, you're really a long way from town still, You're not going to get there till well after midnight. You keep walking like that. I'm like, what? You get a flash. Their dogs and stuff come out after 9. They're like, no, it's too dangerous for you to walk. Really, you got to stay here tonight. And I was like, that is super cool, man. And they were going to cook me dinner, and they started to bring me in and get me settled in. And then lo and behold, I don't know how they just, the bus is coming. I guess there was a late bus they got, because things break down all the time up there. And anyway, there's another bus. And I thought I was on the last bus for the day, right? But anyway, they're like, and then sure enough, like, you could see some headlights kind of scratching along through the trees way back. And we ended up getting all picked up. And I remember I threw them 100 roops. I was like, here, take the money. Thank you for bringing me in. Thank you so much. They wouldn't take any money or anything. And as we were walking out the door, I threw a couple 100 roops down on the floor because they wouldn't take the money. And I never knew what happened when they came back in and found it. Hopefully they thought, fell out of his pocket. I left. Incredible, friendly people. And down in Kerala too, and further south, it's just a wonderful, it's been one of those customs and cultures that have been welcoming people for thousands and thousands of years. Once you get out of those city centers and things, see, I'm smiling. I really love that place. Once you get out of these big city centers and whatnot, there's just some really beautiful, genuine souls that are living there that are just, it's, you got to remember, this is the early 1990s, though, traveling there. So, it's way more, like the population has doubled since I was there that last time. Last time I was there was 95. So put that in context of 1995 being the last time. So look at the population. Crazy, man. But that was I'll never forget those times. The Himalayan sunsets, Himalayan sunrises, like you get on the trekking trails. And Nepal was good too. But like just that roaring, because a lot of those trails follow the rivers up. I'd never been to the point where I lost my consciousness through the sound of a river. I became the river itself, the flow of the water. Like I lost I was there and my body was there, but it became the river. And I can't describe it to you. I guess you have to be there and do it yourself. But there was no sensation. It was almost like being in a deprivation chamber, but the only sound and feeling was the river and becoming part of that, and then reconnecting back to everything else that was connected to that. It was as if I'd left my body, but I was still standing right there, but I can't explain it. It was really, I wouldn't say an out-of-body experience, but an enhanced consciousness experience encompassing and I'm walking up the river the whole time, and these ions are blasting everywhere, and it was just really cool. It was a very eye-opening experience to not only that part of it, but to the lies of the World Bank helping everybody. Because when I first got into Calcutta, I'd gone, we're the best, we're helping everybody, the whole American brainwashing thing. And I got there and I'm like, it took me about one day for everything I realized in my entire life to be shattered and understood to be a lie. Going in just to Calcutta way back in the early 90s for just a single day, smashed all of that brainwashing I'd ever had happen to me. And again, to have that and you can try to deal with it or just walk away and go back into your cozy bubble of lies again. But I just couldn't do it. Like once Humpty Dumpty broke, it ain't never going back. So that whole thing and that whole India experience, and I'd gone back 3 different times. I was so eager to get back every year after that, to go up in the Himalaya again, and then in Nepal and all that stuff. It was just an amazing, amazing experience. I really hope nothing like that happens to them, because it is such a beautiful history place, but just, there's some real different energies coming out of those big mountains up there. I mean, you don't have those guys sitting up there meditating for nothing. There's some incredibly special energies coming out of those Himalayan mountains and around in there. So We're coming on break here in just a minute. If you like this type of conversation, please hit us up. Civilization Cycle. Buy me a coffee. Well, buy us a double espresso. And also the civilizationcycle.com website. You can go right there, put in your email, and we'll give you the show notes of each episode, the top 8, maybe 9 ideas that we have, so you can start conversations with friends and family. Ransom, take us into the break and fill me out. I know that it says that I'll end in 15 minutes, this thing here. We're on Teams. We're stuck on Teams for a minute. Work around. But take us out for a minute. And I was going to say I lost my thought there. But yeah, we'll be right back after a couple minutes on the break here. Please stick around. Come back for the second hour mini Ice Age conversation. Excuse me, Civilization Cycle. I was stuck on the old mini Ice Age because we're into the grand solar minimum again. Can you believe it? It is here, and they're covering for it once more.
Never get left out in the cold. There is never a reason to ever let you or your family suffer. Instafire and Civilization Cycle are on a mission to make fire starting and off-grid living easy for everyone. You shouldn't have to be a mountain man to strike a flame and make a fire anytime, anywhere.
There are few things you can count on in a major disaster. Having your water supply cut off is one of them. With the Alexa Pure Emergency Water Bank, you'll have months of drinking water in your home. Everyone else will stand in line waiting to get just a few bottles. It's one of the easiest, most affordable ways to store emergency water, and it takes up hardly any space. The Alexa Pure Emergency Water Bank includes 1 BPA-free liner, comes with a siphon pump for extracting water, provides easy-to-follow instructions, fits just about any bathtub, large or small, fills quickly in 30 minutes or less, holds up to 65 gallons of water, and keeps water fresh for up to 16 weeks, holds about 2 months of water for one person. A person can generally survive without water for about 3 days. However, the exact amount of time depends on many factors, including age, activity level, and overall health.
Don't gamble with your life and well-being. Being prepared is easier than ever with Civilization Cycle and Alexa Pure.
And we're back.
Yeah, and welcome back for the second hour right here. Civilization Cycle. Ransom, I sent you a couple super chats coming off the Buy Me a Coffee. OMG, thank you so much. We are going to pop these on the screen here for you. And Ransom, I kind of hogged the time talking about the Himalaya, and I know you had a story already primed for us on there on the browser. And also Revolution Radio, thank you for letting us broadcast right through here as our stream point. And if you consider free speech something of value, jump over to revolution.radio and you'll find a donate tab right at the top there. And Ransom, please begin here for the second hour. And what was the article that you were showing up? I was kind of focused on the camera and I'd missed that for just a moment. But remember, if something were to happen over in India, that's a major watershed for the rice crop for the world as well. You got to think at the amount of crops that are being grown. Like India is a major rice producer. If something were to, well, Pakistan, they're a medium producer. But if something were to happen to that watershed over there, something were to happen in some sort of exchange nuclear wise there, it's not just those two nations you'd have to think about. Like the rice crop of the world would be diminished by 10 to 15% at the minimum. Not only that, they wouldn't be able to grow it, but they would also be on the market looking for it. So the price rises in rice would just be so astronomical. It would set off civil unrest everywhere around the planet where rice is a major staple crop. So think further afield than just that area. Okay, they're going to fight or whatever. It would disrupt the world's food supply. Absolutely, it would. So Ransom, jump us on. What did you have for us there? And also, some of the screen grabs I sent you there as I readjust myself.
Yeah, no, I was showing how this, everything resets. I love that. Anyway, I was going to show you guys this, China's fueling this war. So like they're all tied in to each one of these little seemingly all of a sudden conflicts just popping up around the world at the right time. And then you have the World Economic Forum guy stepping down and running off, and then you got this other guy coming in. You have the Pope dying. You have all of these changes just perfect to reset everyone's thinking. And I was also going to show this, that, we're not going to be left out of this. So here's a New Mexico post right here from the Pinon Post, or Pinon, excuse me, for people that got mad. Pronunciation. The U.S. military now authorized to detain criminal aliens in New Mexico. So you're having these bureaucratic fights over what's going on. But if you see this picture right there, that's a guy that's active duty. He's in full gear. He's armed. They have, artillery set up already along the U.S.-Mexican border in New Mexico. As I told you before it hit the headlines, that I saw that activity just going down to El Paso and coming back through Fort Bliss. They are training for something here. And if all of these other things go on around the world, you get these triggers, then all of a sudden here at home, necessarily you're going to have to be dealing with things that just popped up here. So if you were in a cartel per se and you were waiting to do a move, you would wait till the U.S. military was busy somewhere else around the world. And it seems like they knew that. They're preemptively setting up this new trade block over here, but it's going to be heavily militarized. It's going to be somewhat like Israel-Palestine. And if you know how that wall is, they have, and I know a lot of people get mad about this because recently they had an attack. However, if you discount that attack, normally they have the most sophisticated AI weaponry system installed into that wall. So that wall is a beta test. They're doing facial recognition, biometrics. There's really no way for a person to get from one side of the wall to the other unless there's some kind of breakdown in intelligence and technology, if you know what I mean. Otherwise, nobody's getting across. They have FLIR, they got drones up, they have satellite surveillance that can show what people are doing. I mean, the joke is on the public. The technology is so next level that you're not going to get to see it until it rolls out into combat theaters that evidently are popping up all over the world. And then, what's China going to do if we stop buying their stuff? They'll probably just sell it to the Europeans, who have already basically converted to communism, at least as far as certain things go. I wouldn't even see that it's that far-fetched that you see a bunch of countries in Europe get rid of their allegiance to NATO for their own benefit, if that makes sense. So we're seeing that shatter belt happening in a bunch of areas. I know that they've always been there, but you can count this Middle East bloc, and now you're having some kind of serious problems over in India and Pakistan. You have China getting involved in Ukraine. You have now, 6, 7 nuclear armed nations, maybe 8 if you count Israel, all getting involved in redrawing the map. Not just the economic map, the trade map, but literally physical borders around the world. And that, by any other name, is World War III. So necessarily you're going to have population reduction shortly after the beginning of that.
And Ransom, I sent you another link there from Watchers.news. Toxic metals pollute 17% of global cropland. And while you're at it there, Ransom, if you can look up ethylene, Ethelene, off of Zero Hedge. America is the #1 exporter of ethylene to China, and that is a precursor, again, to produce plastics. Now, we just had a ship going over there that had 46,000 tons of ethylene, and it was diverted up to Japan. So there's already a slowdown in the plastics industry in China. But the problem is a lot of that plastic makes its way back here for packing, food packaging specifically. So that whole turn down on plastics consumption would also have perhaps a detrimental effect on us, shall we say. And also this thinking that Europe can soak up everything. Their economy is in shatters because, like you say, they've gone beyond woke into communism. They got the ECB over there, wants to bring in central bank digital currencies by the end of the year here. I think December 1st is when they're going to go live. December 1st, 2025 is when they're going to force people to use the digital euro. So we can see how that could be a Charlie Foxtrot in itself. And that's just not going to be usable to, like, the goods out of China right now are ceasing anyway. The societal problems from that blowback is just horrific and tremendous. There's thousands of articles now. Last week, it was hundreds of articles, hundreds of factory owners, hundreds of people talking about we lost our jobs, factories are closed, banks are calling in the loans, and there's already people here at the gate to confiscate and auction off the equipment. But now it's thousands this week. Thousands. So even if we were to resolve something, it's still going to take months and months and months before anything starts heading back. And I think this is kind of a one-way street. Once it's done, it's done. Because you got to look at in COVID too, like once those businesses went out of business, especially the small, medium enterprise, mom and pops, they just didn't come back. All right, so that's kind of where we're sitting at this. Once these Chinese companies are out of business, they're just not coming back. They don't have, and how would they ever find, the same salespeople to come back to talk to the same, American buyers again? Nobody's going to trust anybody, and it's just going to be. Now at this point, would you send your money first so China can make it? I don't think so. There's going to be no trust, and that breaks down right away. No trust, and also this toxic metal thing here, which is interesting. Ransom is off this the Watchers.news. Toxic metals. If you look where their pollution is for the toxic metal pollution, it's right over Pakistan and India.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
In Southeast Asia, yeah, isn't that so interesting? Like the
And
metals pollution is the point of disrupting crops anyway. Now, would they tell you on the news that's the reason the crops are being destroyed is because of metal pollution? Or would they say, oh, because there's some sort of ordinance was dropped and now the crops are no good? I mean, you look at that. That is in. I didn't really notice that until I started putting the maps up here for the links. You see
yep.
some similarity there? What's going on with that?
Well, I was chomping at the bit here. Look, if you look at those
Chomp
two
away.
lines, look at those two lines, and it goes from Taiwan all the way over to Ukraine, which is exactly what we were just talking about. It incorporates India, a little bit of China, Pakistan. You have the Middle East, and you see that super red area there. That's Iraq and Iran, right where we dumped all that depleted uranium a few years back. And then this whole area would be the war zone. There's World War III map right there, which includes Italy, Greece, Turkey, and all of these little Eastern Bloc countries, all the way over to France and Germany. Isn't that ironic? How ironic is that? That is all of the areas that we've been talking about, these unsettling events happening, from Japan all the way over to France. And then, of course, we would have our own little line like that over here in the Americas, which is exactly what's developing.
In which way?
Well, we're building combat zones over here along our border. And then on top of that, you have this whole retaking of the Panama Canal, because we have to have that, especially if this other stuff's going on over there. And then you're going to have all of this realignment of the unofficial governments from Brazil, Venezuela, Cambodia. I'm not Cambodia, Colombia, excuse me. I was thinking of Pol Pot. All that stuff is going to be going off over here because all of those countries are major trade partners with China and India, and the whole thing's about to shut down. And this, we talked about this last year too. So there would be some kind of conflict where people would want to take the Pacific to shut down trade between the Americas and China. That would happen. And then you have all of these other disruptions that might halt China's progress, as you were talking about. And let me put that back up there. You see all this whole coast down Africa, that war zone would be taking place in these waters to the north of it, and all of the waterways around the Arabian Peninsula right there would be the other way trade routes would go. So if you could engulf this area from France to Japan in war, that shuts the world down. That shuts not only the movement of food, but the movement of people. And then what would the post-war look like, where you have all of this area like Sweden, Finland, Russia, Poland, all of that cut off from the Middle East, from Africa, segregated up there on the northern part of that zone. And the same thing would happen over here. You would have Canada, the United States segregated off. And it looks a lot like we're planning to cut off the world and put them in different blocks. And I keep talking about that because that is the original trilateral agenda, was to separate everything into these little blocks so they could micromanage the governing and not let the other blocks affect what's going on there. Essentially cutting off all communication to the world too.
Yeah, and you have to wonder how many people would move there. Because if you look at the Maunder minimum, there's some places in Finland that emptied out 90%, 90. I just sent you another link about a geomagnetic excursion 41,000 years ago that showed the different polar movements and where the auroral displays moved further south and even crossed at times on the equator. Take it back to, say, 1660-ish. Now, generally, the sea ice would be at bay during the summers where they could bring resupply ships in. But during the Maunder minimum, the sea froze over so widely and so deeply that they couldn't bring the resupply ships in. So then come around like 1690, after the Maunder minimum had ended and things went back to sort of normal in the ocean flows in terms of sea ice, and then they could get ships up in there. 90% of the people had fled and left those cities, towns, and they pretty much came back to ghost towns, abandoned buildings. And you could see what would happen if there's no way to resupply up in there in today's climate and conditions as well. I would say it would be a repeat in history and past. And almost all those things that you would see from Norway and Finland and those sort of, more northerly countries, they would have to leave. If they're not going to be resupply in there, then they would have to leave. Absolutely. So we just look at a repeat in history again.
This article you sent me is how humans adapted to increased cosmic radiation during geomagnetic excursion 41,000 years ago. Is this what you were? So this is a really unique time in history because this is when Neanderthals and most likely all of the other hominids, excluding Homo sapiens, went extinct. And the only ones that were left were hybrids with Cro-Magnon, it seems. So this goes back to what I was talking about earlier about the red ochre, right? So they were figuring it out back then that they needed sunscreen.
Just unmirroring myself, I didn't realize my Brighteon uncensored t-shirt was mirroring. Yeah, hey, thanks Mike Adams for getting me over there on the network. Yeah, this information either by the end of the year or whatnot is going to be more difficult to talk about. I mean, the whole global warming agenda anyway made it difficult to earn a living talking about such items and such scientific reportedly papers. Even if you had the science to back up peer-reviewed studies to show your case, you were going against the narrative. Well, we're coming into some severe disruption climatically right now. And one thing about that whole report there, Ransom, was if you go further down and scroll down further, you'll see where the aurora used to go onto the planet. Now that's just where the poles were coming in terms of where the aurora would wrap down on the Earth itself. So normally, it's up at the North Pole, but during this excursion, it wrapped all the way to the equator. All right, and then the further pictures on the bottom there, you can see how you get that. You're getting a multiple there. One more down a little bit. There you go. So this shows you where the auroral ovals would be during these geomagnetic excursions over this several hundred-year period. But you can see it's far different than it is today. Like, you got aurora wrapping all the way down where the southern aurora is almost wrapping into the northern aurora on the equator. So when you look at something this in time frames of, like you said, Ransom, what is possible or what isn't, like this, we've never seen 1,000-foot wave come rolling off the coast after either a land subsidence, some sort of event, comet hitting the ocean or something. We just haven't experienced this. A landslip of such proportions of 500 to 1,000-foot waves, that's so far beyond, it's just Hollywood movie-esque type things at that point. But to see aurora down on the equator is a normal part of every time there's any kind of solar event that you get aurora down to the equator. I mean, talk about a geomagnetic shift. You're seeing it right there, and that's how it moved. Now, who do you think would survive that? Those people that ran to the dolmens. Those people that covered themselves with mineralized clays to hide from the UV.
Are we going to have to invest in that ourselves? I mean, think about that. It wasn't too long you were talking about people having to move back into caves and underground. And when you look at Göbekli Tepe and some of those underground cities there, we all talk about, it's obvious that there was some kind of threat from the sky. Now, whether that be bolides or meteorites, people don't really think about just sunlight itself being a danger to human beings.
Yeah, Ransom, can you pop yourself back on the screen here? I keep seeing myself. Are you able to hop back on? And
yeah, there I am.
Yeah, because I'm turned sideways and I'm trying to get some articles up here.
So, I mean, that's been a big mystery in history is why they were doing this. And what's funny about it is, like I mentioned, they didn't stop doing it. They kept doing it all the way into, like, the red paint people. You have the Minoans. You have people at Santorini and all of that. There's frescoes depicting the males wearing red ochre all over their skin because they must have needed it, or at least the information was passed down generationally to them that they knew they could protect their skin that way. Uh, Evidently, Neanderthal man didn't get the message, and because they didn't have the same gene set as us, they disappeared. I mean, that's literally the date, this 41,000 years ago or 42,000 years ago right here, where they would have been seeing auroras around the equator, and people wonder why, Squatter Man is all over, or these other plasma petroglyphs that date back to this time, as they show at the top of this paper right here. I mean, look up here at this stuff up here. What is that they're seeing in the sky? Why are they making sure that they, put their handprints so people in the future know they were there? It must have been that there was something in the sky, probably all kinds of aurora phenomenon that would have freaked you out if you were just a Stone Age hunter-gatherer. And I don't think all groups were Stone Age hunter-gatherers, but the majority of people on the planet were living simply, just like that.
Yeah, such a link from Armstrong Economics there with the pi wave. Because talking about cycles, mathematical cycles, if they're finding the fourth turning here and integrating that into longer term cycles of these 400-year grand solar minimum, and 5 of those is a 2,000-year cycle. So then we start to get into the 5s. And what about the cycle of pi in terms of economic cycles? Did you get that link there? Into
Yeah,
Armstrong Economics, yeah. Martin Armstrong, I'm getting an interview with him coming up here. So think about the 5s anyway. The 5 80-year cycles equals a grand solar minimum cycle of 400 years. But 5 of those 400-year cycle also equals a 2,000-year cycle. So then if we look at numerology and numerals, the way that they come out mathematically, because I talked to a few traders who are like, damn, dude, crypto is it follows all the mathematical rules for charting pretty well. It did up until now. It seemed to be really, a lot of people made a lot of money because if they could read charts, crypto in the beginning followed it very precisely of look for this pattern, look for this pattern, look for this pattern, it's going to do this, and it did. Until BlackRock and all these bigs have gotten involved in the ETFs and sort of thing. But if you're looking in terms of the charts and the cycles that are coming right now, so I'm over here on Armstrong Economics. If you would like to follow along, I think Ransom will get the thing up here in just a second. They call it the economic confidence model. And this is from 2020 to 2028, and it's based on pi. And it looks like we are coming into a low period of activity right about now. And from this point forward, it should increase until just into 2026. And then it is going to drop down off that into far lower than it is today, around beginning of 2027. And the ultimate end at 2028. And this is interesting because Valentina Zarkova talks about that being a food famine time, based on solar activity and how the magnetic fields of the sun will be so discombobulated that it'll throw our Earth's ability to grow food out of kilter. And Ransom, did you find that chart there to put up?
No, I'm trying to get it. For some reason, this Teams thing froze. It didn't send me what you sent.
Yeah, the team looks at Armstrong Economics there. I sent it into the link again. Again, this Teams thing is terrible, by the way. So here, I'll send you the link again if I can. Maybe it'll come through this time. But Armstrong Economics, yeah, he's one of the best on the planet. Like Marty, created. This is the person I like anyway. He created models that could have predicted wars and predicted outcomes, but he wouldn't deal with our government, so they threw him in prison for years because he wouldn't allow our government to use the algorithm that they'd created that was so precise. Because then they knew when the conditions would be right to ride on top of these cycles to overthrow governments and have them have economic collapses faster on a precise cycle. Because if you knew it was going that direction anyway, you could ride on top of that and get a greater outcome. Very much like we're seeing today with this grand solar minimum-ish thing. I'm curious why it didn't pop up right to that specific article and chart that I had there.
I had to do it manually. No links are coming through.
What?
So what was the name of the article?
Let me find it here for you. Yeah, we're going to do it old school. Let me find it. Oh, tariffs equal depression. Do we just go kaput? And that's off Armstrong Economics. Tariffs equal depression. Do we just go kaput?
There it is. No,
yeah, and the economics confidence model. Now, so you have to understand that he's working with Pi on this to get the models. But there seems to be some repetitiveness in a cycle also that's also incredibly based on this 80-year fourth turning. Then it seems that this numerological code is encoded in everything. So when you look at this and you say, all right, well, if we do follow this, when was the high pretty much of the markets, right? You could say right after Trump was coming in, there was a bump also. And if you follow the models here, you can start to see the same market peaks and troughs. So if you just go S&P and you overlay this on the S&P, you can start to get a good gauge. These overlay nicely on top of the highs and lows. And again, crypto market, sort of, but more the traditionally established Dow, for example. So if we do look out at this and we look further afield and you start to say, all right, well, when would the unrest start to happen? Because I was with Marjorie Wildcraft and she was saying that there was MIT Review, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology review, one of their magazines with the World Statistics Institute, had done thousands of studies on why riots occurred, and it was all because of food pricing. And they could actually ping, and their whole case study was, we knew 2 weeks before the Arab Spring was coming, based on food prices, that there was going to be unrest sweeping through the Middle East. And they've gotten it down to a model also, which remains proprietary. But food unrest is coming again. And, you know, if I was guessing, I would say it would occur at the beginning of 2027 based on this confidence model, or in the middle or toward the middle end of 2028. But that's when Valentina Zarkova also predicts that the magnetic fields of our sun will be so, like I say, out of flow that it will disrupt our jet streams. I mean, incredibly more disrupted than now. And this will cause food shortages globally, which, by the way, she said in 2018, hey, governments in the world, this is going to happen in 2028. Y'all might want to start stocking food right now for that 2028 thing about 10 years from now. So it was interesting that the same dates of 2028 appeared from her, completely disrelated, and then from Martin also, just as an economist. So we have a solar physicist and an economist agreeing on at least the date of 2028. Something substantial is about to happen. So mark that in your calendar. Happy 2028.
Well, that sounds really fun there. But don't worry about it, because Musk is going to be sending us to Mars right through these years. That's the plan. They're just going to go wait it out. Think about that. That's the plot to, I don't know how many, even Planet of the Apes, right? They had that same plot where we just leave, or the elite leave, or they go in their bunkers, they let all this stuff happen, and then they just come out the next decade with their fancy technologies and become basically gods. And that's what governments have been wanting to do, from communist revolutions to all kinds of, you know, technocratic and completely top-down governments, including ours. That's what they want. They want you to worship the state as God, and they almost have the position to do that. And plus, they'll be saying, look what we did for you. We blocked out the sun. That's all supposed to be happening right here in this dip up leading up to 2028.
Yeah, and again, those of you buying us a double espresso, thank you so much. Ransom was saying that slide also. I screen grabbed a few there. I'll read them live though, because you got to also wonder, if that were to be the thing, then the Sumerians that we know from 7,000 years ago, how many years prior had they left and then something occurred and they came back with, the advanced writing system and all of these things happening as well. You just got to wonder what that is happening. All right, James Ritchie, thank you for buying us 5 double espressos. Catherine Barlow, so happy you're on Substack. Yeah, thank you for joining us there too. That is going to be a big one. I'm taking some of the videos, also ripping out the text and then including images in that for longer reading posts. But we're going to be able to stream from there as another platform. And also on Telegram, the Civilization Cycle channel, we'll be streaming on there as well. So you can join us if you have a Telegram account and be able to make some comments through there. So we're trying to widen the reach out. And from this point forward, it's going to be exclusive in the Civilization Cycle ecosystem for the broadcast coming out to these different platforms. And someone, thank you, BB, 3 double espressos. William A. Gasper, MD, bought us 5 double espressos. I have some questions for you about the Jabba Dabba Doo. And someone again bought us 3 double espressos. Thank you for bringing that on. And feel free to throw a comment in there, a question if you like, because I'd be happy to answer that for you. And I'll keep monitoring this as we move through the evening. And
So, when
yeah.
you were traveling over there in India and Asia and all these different places, did you ever see meat locked up? We were joking last week about the pictures, but this is next level. This is little chain, like a net thing that's supposed to lock the meat in there and beep if you go outside of the store. We kind of called this. It's really getting bizarre in the food area if they have to lock up things that only cost $1 or $2. $10 for a pound of beef. They have it locked up. It's a steak. They don't want people stealing their ribeyes. I mean, it really is getting cartoonish. The food market. When I go, I try to go right when the truck gets there so I can get their organic meat. What there is, they only offer like a few things, but I try to get that, and everything else is, the price is crazy. I used to be a butcher. We used to have hamburger meat sales for all the holidays, like July 4th or whatever. And we'd grind up a bunch of this meat and sell it for like 68 cents a pound. And that was only like a decade and a half ago. And now I go down there and it's almost as much a pound for ground meat it is for buying steak and roasts and stuff, which is just, I mean, come on, that's literally crazy. And then when you look at this tweet here that's showing this video of some people in Walmart locations coming across locked up meat. Bizarro world.
Yeah, no, I could answer your question for you. If you were to see somebody steal from a local butcher on the street, all of the vendors or the people locally would grab them and whoop the tar out of them. Like that would be a no-go. I mean, perhaps in supermarkets, where it's, in a city where nobody knows each other. But in terms of a local neighborhood and a local butcher like that, just wouldn't happen. It just wouldn't happen. That's the whole thing. There's rules there. I mean, there used to be rules here too. Now, don't get me wrong. In America, you did that in 1930s and 40s. Oh, you get whooped to the point, and then the police would take you in and whoop you again, right? So there used to be some sort of a semblance of that in America, but that's been 80 years. But still in Asia, yeah, you try that. Oh, you're not going to get far. They hate thieves there. They hate them. They hate them. They really do hate them. And people will turn a blind eye to them getting their street justice because they could have just as easily stolen the cash out of your mom's pocket or your grandma's pocket or whatever, because it's still a very cash heavy society. I know not in China now, but it used to be. And thieves, just if they catch them, they get dealt with. But I had a question for you about pink slime anyway, being a butcher, because we hear all these stories of pink slime. Because we bought a 750-pound Angus live weight and 250 a pound live weight from the Amish guy. But then I had to get a butcher to go to do that, and cut fee was $1 a pound, and they had a slaughter fee and that sort of thing. So, we got about 750 pound, but it came back. We got bones for the dogs. We saved the organs for the dogs also, and that sort of stuff. But I'm curious, Ransom, since you were in that, now we keep hearing about pink slime because me living in Taiwan, almost everything has pink slime on it for that, let's say, preservative. By the time they get it from America over to across the ocean, it seems to be preserved a little bit different. So I don't know if you're seeing pink slime on the meats here in America on the shelf, or is that just exclusively for overseas transportation?
Well, what they do is they pump gas. This is how they used to do it. They would pump gas in the packages so that the meat would stay red. Because exposure to oxygen makes meat brown. So if they can add a solution to the meat, it'll prevent it from absorbing oxygen. Now, I never saw pink slime as a butcher, but there is something close to it, and what the pink slime is the next level of that. So we would get boxes of head meat, so all of the gross trimmings off of the cow, and then you just run that stuff through a grinder and you get ground beef. Now, ground chuck and that other stuff is generally the steaks that you see on the shelf that turn brown. So what they do is they take that to the back, and then they put it in the grinder and they regrind it, and then everything turns red again, and you put it back out with a new package. So it's been gross for a long time, the whole meat industry. But pink slime is more of a mush of all kinds of stuff. I mean, like, it's even worse than the head meat thing because it's even less palatable meat than that. So you're talking chunks of cartilage and bone and hair and all kinds of stuff. And if it's the pink slime that makes the chicken stuff, you don't even want to get into that. They just, clip the beaks, and that for the females get to go off to lay eggs, but the males, they don't want those. So they just get ground up with feathers and all. And that turns into your chicken nuggets. Yummy.
Feathers and all. They grind them feathers and all.
Yeah, you can go to TikTok, YouTube, whatever, watch a video. They pick out all the males because they're not going to turn into meat chickens or lay eggs, and they just grind it.
That's strange. You think they would at least, salvage the meat birds and then do something with those, but I guess, they're made for a certain size because down here, Tyson Foods, Tyson Chicken in Georgia, used to be like one of the number one employers. And if you drive, you can still see the old chicken houses, but a lot of them are abandoned and whatnot. But I do remember the chickens are raised for the perfect size to go into a certain bag. Like, they don't force a chicken in. They grow up literally to within the hour. Then they're butchered and put into a certain bag. Well, all the workers from Tyson went on strike, and it went over a couple of days, so the chickens no longer fit in these bags. But they got millions of these bags, but there's 0 bags fit for the chickens that had overgrown their growth period. And that was a big problem. But instead of selling those on the market, like, hey, we got all these active chickens, what did they do? They destroyed them. Well, they probably just ground them up, like you just said. But they missed their production date on that, and and again, my first thing was like, oh, there's going to be crazy amounts of chicken everywhere for nothing. It actually created a shortage because they missed that chicken run, and then they had to wait for those birds to raise back and get to that same bag size again. So they had to wait on a whole run on that. So it makes sense that they would have all been ground up.
Yeah, I used to build chicken houses and repair them. And I got to, I had friends that ran the chicken house, and it is another world in there. You can't go in there and breathe. There's so much ammonia from the pee and different stuff that you cannot breathe in there. It's like going to another planet. And all inside there's, these thousands of chickens and there's dead ones all over the place. And the other chickens are eating those chickens. And so there's a guy that comes in at the end of the day, every day, and he gets out the culls. That's what they call them. They pull out all the dead chickens that they can. But usually they're partly eaten already. And then when the chickens are the right size, and what's really gross is they don't even eat food. They eat powder and these little water things that's in a machine. It comes down, it loads in the powder, the chickens eat it. You know, it's got everything they need. And then there's another one for dripping water. So they never even eat real things. They might eat bugs that get in the house, or I dropped my nails one time. They ate those nails in seconds. So it's really gross. But when they get to the right size, this truck drives up from Tyson, and out comes these little bobcats with a big vacuum on the front and a tube, and they just drive in the house and they suck up the chickens. And then they load it. And then, you know, a bunch die in that process. Some fall off the truck, and people get them and eat them. The whole process from beginning to end is alien. Not only that, when you go in there to get the culls and work in there, you have to wear booties and all kinds of stuff to make sure you don't bring in bacteria or viruses or whatever from the outside world. It's a very sensitive ecosystem in there, if you want to call it that. And that's all the chickens know. Just thousands of chickens, eat everything in sight, and then you get sucked up by a vacuum and sent off to a factory.
How much different is that than us getting put through school for 12 years and indoctrinated and then get sucked up into the corporate world or into whatever world it is where you're on that treadmill earning something called money to keep a system of cogs and wheels functioning? It's one step below that without the neck breaking, but at the end of a lifetime, a body is worn out, is it not? See a lot of similarities in that. Same, but different, should I say? That, I don't know, where you could probably draw a few, you know, parallels in there somewhere.
Well, let's just put it this way. If you're eating free-range chickens on your own farm, they don't experience any of that alien world, torture, deaths, all of that stuff. The worst they got to worry about is like a hawk or something coming down and snatching one of your chickens. But that's, you know, nature. And then the whole fact that the chicken in the first place is not even anything close to the original jungle bird of thousands of years ago. So the whole bird itself is a direct consequence of human endeavors there. We created what we call a chicken. And even the ones in the chicken houses, they're like all clones. They're all white chickens. Like they never see the light of day. And I don't know, when you're going to the grocery store and you want to pick this chicken or that chicken, you might want to think about that kind of thing. If you've ever seen a pig, I don't even want to get into the swine, and their circumstances are very similar as far as from production to the factory. So me, myself, I want to eat organic, grass-fed, free-range animals if I can from a farm. If not, you know, there it is.
Well, these are little guys. We've been hatching our own. These are some geese that we got just the other day. They popped out. They all popped out pretty much in the same 2 days. And they're all nice.
I see a lot of grease. There's that grease.
No, they're fun. You know, they just kind of falling asleep and they do what they do. There's little ones. Just a day. They're maximum 2 days old, and they're kind of spry already. You'd be surprised. So we got 6 of these little baby geese here, some Pomeranians and some Africans. You can see they're slightly different in coloration. And yeah, they're just kind of happy little things here. So we got 6 of these, and then we got some bantam chickens, which are the small bantams. Are a little bit about the same size as a quail maybe, and they give some nice eggs out of those. So anyway, I just wanted to show you these. I'm going to go put them back because they're a little chilly. I'm going to put them back in the brooder, in the heater. But you can see they're a little bit different, right? The coloration's a bit different on them. And come on now.
Right. That's why you have the neighbor be the butcher, because, you know, I would name those little things. They're too cute. I couldn't eat them. So I'd have to have someone else take care of that. I'm just kidding. If I'm hungry and my family's hungry, the ducks got to go. That Yeah, I couldn't eat those. I don't know about you guys. They were pretty cute, weren't they? Solid. But that's all right, because in the future, all the rich people are going to live in these little societies where David has his ducks at his house, and he could sell them to these private towns that they're making. It's like the smart city, but they're building up rich cities for rich people for the coming times. And this is what it'll be like. You'll have your little rich town, and you can keep out all those third world people, including the average American, because we're now kind of in the third world. But what I was saying, though, that's why you get your neighbor to do the butcher. I mean, because after you name those cute little things and they've been around their whole life, I don't want to be the Grim Reaper for them, but I will eat them because they're delicious.
Yeah, and those are geese, and they within 4 to 5 months reach a very, not the actual, pretty large, close to 90% of its largeness is reached. The time of maximum weight and fatness is reached in that 4 to 5 months. So if you're looking to bring something up, by the time you bring up a chicken to that point where it can start to lay eggs, you could already have, 18-pound goose for meat. They have a lot more fat, and if you're looking for something, in this grid down where fats are going to be much more important, ducks or geese will be something to look at. And tradables, I mean, what would you trade me for 2 18-pound geese? A laying pair, no less, where the female's laying right now. And 2 of those is a mated pair. They're both about 18 pounds. What would you pay? What would that be worth? Because these geese will continue to lay eggs out and we hatch them. We had the foresight to buy a couple incubators, and then those are automatic. Everything's automatically timed. So we've been hatching out ducks. We got a duck earlier today, a Cayuga duck, another 2 bantams, and then those geese came out a couple days back. So we got 6 of those. A few bantams. We got 3 bantams and 1 duck over the last 4 days. So think about those birds are coming on, and then what could we trade those for? It's not so much giving them to your neighbor to take them for meat, but what could you trade them for is more the thing, because we got field here and everything's fenced in. I'll trade some gold for some geese.
I was going to say, would you take
Goose
that?
that laid the golden egg. I'm serious. When that is a very, very true statement. Think about
rush.
that yeah.
The new gold rush.
Continually, and they're a free range. We just leave them out, and they do go and just nibble around out in the front field. Now, the winter time is the difficult time. So for 4 months, we do have to take much more care and provide food, like layer pellets and these sort of things, some scratch grain in there to keep them up. But we save hay, and then we feed them now. They love the grasses. But during those other 8 months of the year, they're free ranging around. They're always out scratching around. And we got, like I say, the front 3 acres is fenced in. So they're able to bang around out there under the orchard looking for nibbleables. And, they try to keep the insect population down, and they're just eating an enormous amount of proteins just provided from the grasses that are around here, wild style. So they're not completely free. I wish we had, 12 months of completely free ranging, but it's just not like that. So wintertime, we cull a few, like you said, give them to a neighbor to take off. And that's the thing. So if we had 6 birds, we'd give them to a neighbor and say, you keep 2 and you give us back 4, but we want them butchered, defeathered, and you keep 2 birds for your fee, and we just need 4 back completely processed and something like that. So the trade is you do the work and you get the free protein out of that. And it depends. Some people love ducks better. Some people like chickens better. We have some turkeys, which we've done that with. By the way, I need to get rid of another big 50-pound turkey if anybody is interested. But the protein to trade it, somebody else would have to do the work, because I like to eat them too. But you're right, Ransom, after you play with them for a while and they start following you, there's a couple we keep that are sort of like pet-ish, that are follow you, like out of the ordinary birds that'll just come behind you, sit down in the field when you're doing something out there. Those kind of birds, those are the ones we keep. And the other ones that are squawky or nasty or whatever, we kind of get rid of them if they're causing problems.
How's the eggs taste?
Oh, the eggs are giant on the geese. They're super big. It takes you a fair few people to, you would need two people to eat a goose egg. Even me, I can't, it's hard for me to finish one whole goose egg with like some toast and some sausage or whatever. It, ostrich eggs are quite a bit larger than geese eggs. So I'm thinking, holy smokes, you need like four people to eat an ostrich egg. But the little bantam eggs are super tiny. You need three of those to equal about one regular, or two and a half to equal one chicken egg.
How
So,
does
but they
that
lay prolifically. They hardly eat anything. They have no smell, and they just like they're on their own.
is that like the quail eggs that you it helps people with their allergies and stuff like that because they ate the food from the local area? Does that work the same way with those little chickens?
Could be those bantam eggs are slightly larger than a quail egg. Probably like 1.5 quail eggs would equal one of those bantam eggs. But yeah, you didn't think like the bee pollen in the honey is exactly something that if you consume that local honey from the area that you're living in, you're not supposed to have the allergies from all the pollen. But maybe that's an old wives' tale.
I don't know, but I like me some omelets, whether they're duck or not. Nice and buttery duck eggs. No, we were talking one night about how much grease that you could get from that, and I remember hearing that, and then I watched this show that was about the early 1700s till the Revolution, and that was one of the greases that they needed for medical treatment. To put on burns, wounds, all kinds of stuff. They wanted to use the duck grease. It was in high demand because I guess it doesn't help get infected like some other of the greases would do to you.
Oh, above goose fat, really? Duck fat was the number one then, really?
According to that show, yeah. I mean, I would
No,
think
that's
so.
super interesting to know because having a fair few different types of birds around, and getting into that whole chicken array, they need space. They need space, and they need to get out and eat a real thing. Like I would never cram them all in like a little tiny thing. That's not the point. Point is they can have the healthiest eggs, so you get the healthiest eggs, right? That whole loop of life in there too. You're included in that if you're going to consume. So they might as well be the healthiest, freshest. And there is a very big difference. We give the eggs away a lot to people, and they'll take them back to Knoxville or somewhere up, and like, dang, those are some really good eggs. Where'd you get those? You know, oh, we raised them ourselves, and they could definitely taste the difference in the taste, and like you say, that buttery creaminess, if, for a better term, and also just the quality and the density of it. You can just notice it's different when you crack it open. The coloration in the yolk is just dynamite darkness. There's none of this really bright yellowy kind of thing. It's dark, it's borderline orangey, and yeah, you can tell the very big difference in anything. Even if you get like those store-bought eggs and you get them in the nice paper cartons and it says organic, free range, da da da, doesn't even hold a close second to what we can do ourselves. And I would encourage you all, as food prices get higher, to start working with some of this. Now, I know maybe you don't have the space or some of your housing associations won't allow you, but you can get away with bantams. They look like little pet birds, and they still lay eggs for you.
I was also wondering with those the little chickens and stuff, how fast are they multiplying?
Well, as fast as you can hatch them out, as fast as you can incubate them, because you have your pairs that are already laying right now or setting, and all you have to do is harvest the eggs, and as long as they're fertilized, you can just keep putting them in the incubator and keep rolling that around. So the little ones we just got over this last week, it'll take about 4 months before they can start laying. 4 to 5 months for the little bantams. Their bodies are just faster. They're like little hummingbirds almost. So they actually produce eggs earlier than what you can, like your traditional barred rock or some sapphire gem or anything like this chicken, foghorn. Although those, I think the leghorns produce a little faster too. They're well-known egg layers, but those littler ones, and also, they come in just some stunningly beautiful, amazing colors. So you could almost put them in the exotic bird category. So even if you have a homeowners association, like, well, those are exotic birds. And no, they really wouldn't know that they were chicken. They don't really make that kind of noise, and they're very soft and quiet, and they flutter around like real birds do. So you could get away disguising that if you need to. Get the bantams, not a regular size chicken, but you'll still get some protein out of them. Peace. We're out of here. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. Civilization Cycle on your dial.